I get credit for the only animated slide, I think, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about how to build a ecosystem around free and open source software that we think can outcompete the advantages that Megacorp has. At the end of the day, like as great as a technical project as Urbit might be, that's only a single piece of the thing that we need to build here to bring about the kind of world that we want. The other pieces are around distribution and monetization. And we think that FOSS can actually play a key advantage in building an ecosystem that can beat these much better capitalized companies. So here's what I'm going to cover. I want to motivate the discussion a little bit, so provide some background. Part of our solution has to do with NFTs. So we think NFTs actually plug into a bunch of the gaps in the project so far. So I'll talk about what that looks like and why the NFTs are an attractive sort of primitive for this. I'll give a quick overview of how we're starting to build this out. And then I'm going to show our software and try and get all of you to buy it and use it with us. So that will come at the end. And I'm going to show pretty hard, so prepare yourselves. Okay, so why do we think that FOSS is actually important? What process is this playing into that can help us outcompete Megacorp? At the end of the day, product development is about the most iterations on software as you can get to increase your chance of finding something that's actually valuable and usable and technically feasible for your customers. FOSS is the fastest method that we know of for iterating on software design. Linus has this famous quote that with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. This is not true in large companies where they build software hierarchically. It's certainly not true in the largest companies like Facebook and Google. The issue with FOSS today is that you can't actually distribute open source applications easily with the source code. Even if you're selling an app that's open source, developers that want to build on top of it have to sort of go out of band to find it in GitHub or some other repo and build from there. The bigger issue, though, is that there's no path to monetizing FOSS directly. You can sell apps that are FOSS on the App Store, but they're not these ecosystems, these distribution channels are sort of inherently in tension with the values of FOSS. So even though this has such clear competitive advantages from the perspective of a software development ecosystem, the channels of distribution and monetization that we have make this actually not doable in practice. So this is part of what we're trying to fix with Vaporware and what we think Urbit is going to be uniquely good at. Before I get to that, I want to go back in time though. I want to see what we can learn from ViaWeb. People that aren't familiar with ViaWeb, it's definitely got a claim for the first great client-server web app ever made. Hotmail maybe can contest that a little bit, but this was early internet. This was also written entirely on Lisp, which is pretty fun and pretty interesting. This is a DSL written on top of Lisp that the guys that designed ViaWeb put together so that their early users could design effectively custom Shopify apps. You might not know what ViaWeb is, but you definitely know who Paul Graham is, the Y Combinator founder. ViaWeb is the thing that bootstrapped Y Combinator. It's the way that Paul Graham made his first millions and was able to then go on and fund startups. Paul Graham's best essay, in my estimation, is called The Other Road Ahead. And this is basically a first-hand account of the things that they saw at ViaWeb that led to web apps outcompeting desktop software, that led to concretely ViaWeb outcompeting rivals, but more generally the ecosystem that was building around the early internet outcompeting a bunch of desktop applications. This is such a good essay that I'm actually going to read some of this for you. Paul's also a very concise writer, so I think this story will be interesting. Okay, this is Paul Graham now. At first, desktop computers didn't look like much of a threat. The first users were all hackers, or hobbyists as they were called then. They liked microcomputers because they were cheap. For the first time, you could have your own computer. The phrase personal computer is part of the language now, but when it was first used, it had a deliberately audacious sound, like the phrase personal satellite would today. Why did desktop computers take over? I think it was because they had better software, and I think the reason the microcomputer software was better was that it could be written by small companies. I don't think many people realize how fragile and tentative startups are at the earliest stage. Many startups begin almost by accident. A couple guys, either with day jobs or in school, writing a prototype of something that might, if it looks promising, turn into a company. And at this larval stage, any significant obstacle will stop the startup dead. Writing mainframe software required too much commitment up front. Development machines were expensive, and because the customers would be big companies, you needed an impressive-looking sales force to sell it to them. Starting a startup to write mainframe software would be a much more serious undertaking than just hacking something together on your Apple II in the evenings. And so you didn't get a lot of startups writing mainframe applications. The arrival of desktop computers inspired a lot of new software because writing applications for them seemed an attainable goal to larval startups. Development was cheap, and the customers would be individual people that you could reach through computer stores or even by mail order. The application that pushed desktop computers out into the mainstream was VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet. It was written by two guys working in an attic and yet did things no mainframe software could do. VisiCalc was such an advance in its time that people bought Apple IIs just to run it. And this was the beginning of a trend. Desktop computers won because startups wrote software for them. It looks as if server-based software will be good this time because startups will write it. Computers are so cheap now that you can get started, as we did, using desktop computers as a server. Inexpensive processors have eaten the workstation market and are most of the way through the server market. Yahoo servers, which deal with loads as high as any on the internet, all have the same inexpensive Intel processor that you have in your desktop machine. All you need to, and once you've written the software, all you need to sell it is a website. Nearly all of our users came direct to our site through word of mouth and references in the press. There is all the more reason for startups to write web-based software now because writing desktop software has become a lot less fun. If you want to write desktop software, now you do it on Microsoft's terms, calling their APIs and working around their buggy OS. And if you manage to write something that takes off, you may find that you are merely doing market research for Microsoft. I think there's obviously a lot of parallels to where we find ourselves today. Oops. So, what lessons are there? Web apps won because they did things better for all three key stakeholders in the software development ecosystem. We heard from Paul how it improved developers' experiences, and a little bit about how it improved users' experiences, but it also made a huge change in the way that investors thought about investing in software companies. And this is a lesson that I think Urbit needs to take to heart and to design into the projects, the companies, the software itself. So developers, let's just recap here. Faster to launch, faster to get feedback, less wasted time. Again, iterations. This meant they could iterate faster. For any amount of money they were able to raise, they got more swings at bat. Bugs were reported faster. They were easier to locate because they weren't running in Michigan somewhere. They were on your servers. And they were easier to fix because you could launch an update immediately. And developers also had a global market available from them to them from day one. So it was easier to sell. You just had to stand up a website. You already had the server. Just put it on the internet. And like Paul said, the users could come and find it quite easily. For investors, this is a great pitch. Team sizes are smaller. So for this same fund size, you can fuel many more bets. The web app model of revenue is also much more predictable than these big box releases that were happening for desktop software at the time. The revenue was predictable, and so if you were an investor with cash, you could go, you're in one market right now. If I give you an extra $10 million to launch 10 more markets, I know what the unit economics of that are going to look like. Finally, the fact that these startups had global distribution available immediately meant the ones that found product market fit could grow very quickly and could return the cash to the fund in a much shorter payback period than what the desktop companies were able to offer at the time. So investors loved investing in web app startups for this reason. Finally, for users, they got a whole bunch of new, absurdly cool applications. They could access their app state from anywhere in the world. Hotmail was one of the first large web apps that kicked off this race, because accessing your email from a public library or your mom's house was a game changer. It was much easier to find, try, and buy the software. You just had to find the website. Often they had some free version for you to test it first. And it was also much easier to run and maintain as a user. You didn't have to install it. There was no wizard setup. You didn't have to worry about sort of breaking changes occurring on your own machine. And then finally, the fact that these were all networked computers right from the beginning meant that you didn't just get better versions of what you had already. You got brand new kinds of web applications, brand new kinds of networked applications that had never existed before. And so users loved this too. Web apps won because they did things better for all three key stakeholders in this ecosystem. So summarizing, cheaper and easier development means more developers and startups get going in the first place. Because there's more developers and startups working on it, the risk is systematically lower for these startups. They get more swings at the bat individually. And it's systematically lower for investors because the same amount of cash for a web app funds many more bets than what they could have done for desktops. And because we're getting more guesses, because we're exploring the state space, this like possible set of things that we could be building for our users more quickly, users get better software from developers at a much faster rate than what was occurring in the land of desktop publishing. So this mechanism, this ecosystem, this set of designs kicked off one of the largest bubbles in history. It produced incredible software, it produced an absurd amount of speculative software, and eventually it popped. I think Urbit has to do better than this. I think our bubble needs to be way, way bigger. I think we can get there. The good news for us is there's weaknesses in the armor now. Software distribution has become locked down. You don't just need a website anymore. It's much more like publishing to desktop used to be than where web apps started. Monetization models are limited and prone to censorship. Go on Hacker News and see how many people are yelling about getting kicked off of Stripe for doing something entirely legal. That's not even looking at the worst offenders like Apple. There's actually now a huge development and maintenance burden that individual teams have to take on to release these apps because the stack has grown so sort of out of band with what they're actually trying to deliver to users. And apps have become corporate boring hellscapes because they've gotten siloed into just this local minima of what can be done with apps. Client-server architecture is limiting them in an important way. And actually the means of financing and monetizing these things are limiting current software companies in an important way. So what do we want? We want a system that makes software distribution uncensorable. We want a system that makes the monetization channels for selling that software uncensorable. We want to reduce the maintenance and development costs of the software to such a degree that small teams can once again launch meaningful, impactful products to users. And ideally, this system should create incentives for new kinds of applications to be built, not just rehashing the things that we currently have, but net new applications. Okay, so that's the motivating part of this discussion. That's like what has come before us. This is not a new challenge. Every revolution in computing has been marked by one of these turnings, where it's not just a change in software development and distribution, but it's a change in the channels that we use to sell the software and the mechanisms that we're using to monetize that software. So we think NFTs are sort of the missing piece to this. And I want to sketch out sort of broadly why we think that's the case. So again, these are the things that we want from our system. Some of these are already quite well fulfilled by Urbit itself. We have software distribution on a peer-to-peer basis. It can't be censored by any central body. And if you believe in the promise of Urbit and a very small, formerly frozen ISA, we should get reduced maintenance and development costs over time as well. But Urbit has no view on monetization today, no view on the channels or the incentives that we need to actually build these kinds of apps, not just technically, but economically. So that's where we think NFTs plug in. We think NFTs are sort of a primitive that we can use to monetize software built on Urbit. And we think FOSS combined with these three mechanisms, Urbit and NFTs, is the way to outcompete. So NFTs make software monetization channels uncensorable. On the left-hand side, you have some of the largest channels for distributing software today. They are all walled gardens. They all routinely censor, remove, or deny applications. On the right-hand side, you have an intensely competitive ecosystem of marketplaces, all pulling from the same universal database, where if you get censored as a token creator on one, there's 10 others that will list your tokens for you. And if there's actual demand for those tokens, you can be sure that eventually all of them are going to list it, because these marketplaces are in a race to the bottom. That's why things like royalties have disappeared over time, and why we consistently see platform fees for trading NFTs coming down over time. So on the left-hand side, walled garden, permissioned access. On the right-hand side, all the same benefits, global, but there's no setup. There's a inability to censor it, okay. The other piece here, NFTs can create powerful autonomous incentive mechanisms. We don't just need a way of charging for the things, but we need to incentivize developers to build the kinds of applications that we think are going to be valuable. And ideally, we incentivize them to build in such a way that the design of the system actually outcompetes. Like, the natural incentive is for there to be many more iterations of software development than what you see occurring in proprietary technology. Does anyone know what this image represents? This is the world's most valuable NFT release to date, as far as I am aware. This is POC's Merge. In less than 24 hours, POC sold over $91 million of NFTs. The NFTs themselves were just these individual circles. That's all the artwork was. The thing that people were speculating on was the clever financial mechanisms that POC had encoded into the smart contracts that basically governed the way that these things were distributed and sold and maintained over time. POC did something very clever. He said, if you buy an NFT and then you get another one of these NFTs transferred into the same wallet, that new NFT is either going to merge into the existing one to make a slightly larger version of the NFT, or it's going to consume the smaller one that's currently in your wallet. So every time one of these NFTs enters a wallet, you take two NFTs and you merge them into one. And so the game is, can you get the biggest NFT? Or maybe you don't want the biggest NFT. Maybe you think everyone's going to be racing to get the biggest NFT, and actually having just a single unit, a single mass, will be valuable. Or maybe a community grows around these yellow ones, and that's the sweet spot. So this speculative financial instrument was itself enough to sell $91 million worth of digital goods. Imagine what happens if we attach working functional software to this. Okay, so those are some of the reasons why we think NFTs are the right primitive here. I've got quite a bit of material here. I'm going to try and give you a high-level overview of how we're building this, and then I'm going to demonstrate what this actually looks like in person. And you're going to buy it because I think you're getting excited about this. So we are turning Urbit's user space into NFTs. We are effectively, in a simple case, taking a Gall agent, associating it with a token on Ethereum, and then replicating the code of that Gall agent to the ships of anyone that buys the token. So in this setup, we have an azimuth point, which has a TBA. This stands for token-bound account. This is a Ethereum smart contract wallet that is owned by the azimuth point. When you come along and buy the NFT that's associated with this Gall agent, what effectively happens on-chain is your azimuth point owns this token now. So looking at it from the ship's perspective, this almost looks like a module that you've installed into it, or like a license that's now on your ledger. So Vaporware is software running on Urbit nodes It tracks contract item pairs. That's an Ethereum contract with the items coming out of it. We do desk and state replication on mint or on transfer. And you basically have a software license for free open source software that is represented by an NFT that is owned by the token that represents the node running on the network. We don't just do desks, though. We just do desk now, but we're not just doing desks. We can do a desk, sets of desks, cards, paths, land is kind of interesting. That's some earth creeping in. And all of this is distributed via a new namespace that Little Wolfer has been working on designing. He's called it Shrubbery Light a few times. I think that's not a bad mental model. So as we expand in sort of the functionality of this, you won't just be able to ship software, but you will be able to ship subscriptions, data, and earth content, whether that's a front end or images or videos, all encoded as a single NFT. And this operates autonomously once the users have the Vaporware protocol running on their chip. So this is an open question for us. And I thought this would be a little bit fun to run through and just like leave you with something to think about. But I want to sketch out what this could actually look like for development in a FOSS ecosystem. Let's say Fun builds a pretty cool app, and they call it V1. They turn it into an NFT, and they start selling it. It's popular, and so, of course, because it's popular, Fun wants to update it. They update it with some meaningful new set of functionality, and then they release a new NFT. For buyers that didn't previously have V1, they can just buy V1.1 and get the full thing. But if you were one of the loyal owners of V1, you get a discount on it. What's nice about NFTs is that all gets built in programmatically. They don't have to, the developer here, Fun, doesn't have to write this themselves. They get to piggyback off of all the degenerate DeFi mechanisms that have been made over the last 2 years to do this kind of stuff. Of course, if it's popular, you're going to have competition. So Neck comes along and makes Cold App to compete with Cool App. They think that there's actually a niche market in place where if you took the base Cool App and made some changes to it, you could re-release it and sort of target a new set of developers. And of course, if this starts to take off, what you're actually going to find is that there's going to be many different versions of this. And over time, you would hope to see sort of a forking of base features coming with these apps, all built, again, off of Cool App v1. So this raises some interesting questions. If all these are NFTs, if each of these is monetized, what prevents Fun from acting adversarially? Why wouldn't Fun try and cut off or make changes continuously to v1.1 of their app to screw with Russ and Neck here? Did Neck and Russ have to go ask permission to guarantee like incentive alignment with Fun? Do they have a contract with them? Should they pay Fun for like pay upfront for the use of this app? What if they have not just Cool App built into this, but a bunch of other apps that they're pulling from as well? This is not a permissionless building ecosystem if you think about this from the lens of needing to contract with each of these developers. We think you can use NFTs to automatically remunerate all of the developers here. So if we say, Cool App v1 is selling for $10, Cool App v1.1 is selling for $15. If someone downloads Cold App v1, maybe they tack on an extra $5 of value there. So they're saying, I'll sell my Cold App v1 for $5. And as a new user, what you actually need to do is download the dependencies for that app as well. And what's nice about having these things represented as NFTs is you have a chain of dependencies there that are monetized that you can make an atomic purchase for. And so when a developer comes along and extends Cool App and sells it, the protocol that we're trying to develop, again, this is an open question for us, should automatically reward the more basic, more primitive apps that thing is built on top of. Part of the game, I think, for Urbit software companies is going to be finding the most basic, the most primitive, the most universally desirable applications. Palfun, I think, has a good head start on this. OK, so I'll leave off there. There's more to talk about there, and we're happy to show you sort of the functionality of this stuff in more detail. Now's the fun part. Now's the part where I get to shill the software that we've purchased. OK. Oh, no sound.
Listen up, soldiers. You've been selected for this mission because you have...
Oops. No sound? Good? All right, well, I'm gonna move on then. We'll do the video in a few minutes here. Oh, actually, we need to transfer to my computer after that. Is this me now? It is. OK. So this is the first piece of software that Vaporware is releasing as an NFT. This is live on mainnet. You can now buy this. Let me just try and play this through my speakers here.
Listen up.
Oh no! Now the Wi-Fi. It's not actually running on Urbit. I'll let it buffer. Do I have to do the Steve Jobs where I ask everyone to turn off Wi-Fi? Please, we're struggling to give our demos.
You've been selected for this mission because you have what it takes to conquer the most formidable terrain on Mars. You have the skills, the courage, and the intelligence to overcome any obstacle and defeat any enemy. You are not here to play games. You are here to...
Oh. All right, well, that was pretty hype, so I'm going to buy one of these. Here's our mint page. 0.005 ETH. What an absolute steal. So let me go ahead and enter in my PAT-P here. Need to connect my wallet. And buy this now. I'll confirm. OK, that was successful. I've now purchased this token. I'm going to get a DM in a few minutes from Ligbel, which is the ship the star that we're distributing this from. It will include install instructions. We're working on automating this, but we wanted to get it out to you guys today. And let's just check Etherscan to make sure that this is real. There we go. Now, that's pretty cool. Here's the Tharsis token on my landscape grid. I'm going to keep calling it grid, Philip. I'm sorry. I pre-downloaded it so we could get some games going, actually. So let me open this up now. Here's the game. I don't have any games started yet. I'm going to do something kind of interesting here. We bundle the client and the server code into this. So you can either play as a client, battle your friends, or if your friends are looking to battle each other, you can act as a server and host them. You can play yourself as well. So let me go ahead and set this up for us now. I'm going to set rounds to an hour. I will set max players to 10. I'm going to start a new game here.
Do 0 minutes.
Oh, thank you. So now I'm ready to invite some players. Let me just come back over here. Come back to this slide. We will invite the first 10 players that .post in ligbel/vaporware that have bought and downloaded this game to play with us. So I have this live now, and I will see if there are any. Okay, we've got one. Oh, Sogrim is in now too. So let me go ahead and invite some of these people. I'll invite. We'll invite Sogrim as well. Sogrim double posted. If I start the game, Trent, can I keep inviting people, or will that? Okay, we'll leave it there then. We've got a bunch of information here on purchasing Tharsis. So if you'd like to review how to do that, you can join the group here. We've got a gameplay tutorial here, so you can understand basically how to play it. We've got some server hosting guide, and of course, this is free and open source software, so we have some developer documentation in case you want to try and hack the game, make a paint bot, or just spam people as you're playing. So this is documented and should give you a good head start on doing some fun things with it. That's our presentation.
When you launch the game, is it checking to see that you own the NFT, or
when you attempt to download the desk from Ligbel, it is pulling data from on-chain, seeing if the ship that is owned by the EOA that owns, checking to make sure that the EOA that owns the ship that's requesting it also owns the token, whitelisting you and then allowing you to download the desk from us.
what if someone downloads from somebody else? I'm guessing, is the check only on the service side?
Like someone else republishes it?
Yeah, like I pull it from.
That's fine. Piracy's cool with us.
Okay, but it doesn't check the.
It doesn't
NFT
check
ownership.
directly. No.
Okay.
Yep. We think there's other incentives to not pirate. For instance, if you got one of the first versions of it, maybe the developer is going to be providing some extra benefits to you, or you get into a private group chat where some real Tharsis strats are being shared. So we don't actually think that you need real hardcore DRM to disincentivize piracy. It also just needs to be easy to buy, and that was I don't know, that seemed pretty easy to buy to me.
Any other questions? Okay, give it up for harden-hardys, everybody.